and thank you for joining us. Last week, North Korea delivered on its promise and handed over the remains it found of US soldiers killed during the Korean War, and this time without demanding any monetary compensation. An important development for which President Donald Trump had thanked Kim Jong-un. But so far, there's also been conspicuous silence from North Korea, no comments or acknowledgement on the regime's state media and propaganda outlets. The hope had been that the return of the remains would be a positive trust-building measure that could lead to a progress on denuclearization, but for now it seems Pyongyang are keeping their cards close to their chest. We'll be joined by an expert later to look further into the matter, but we first begin at catching up with the latest headlines at this hour with Devin Whiting at the News Centre. Devin?
Hi, Jung-ho. Yeah, about the return of those remains, reports and government officials say that in past cases, the U.S. had reimbursed Pyongyang for the costs of the search for them and their return, but they say that was not the case this time. EG1 reports.
The U.S. says it paid no money to North Korea for the return of the remains of American troops last week. According to CNN on Saturday, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said that the Secretary of Defense does have the authority to reimburse the North or any other country for expenses associated with the recovery and storage of remains. But in this instance, she said, North Korea did not ask for money and no money changed hands. She went on to say that the repatriation was a tangible step toward fulfilling the commitment North Korean leader Kim Jong-un made to President Donald Trump in Singapore last month. The remains handed over were in 55 boxes brought back on an American military plane that flew to the north to pick them up. Prior to the return, a defense POW-MIA accounting agency official had said that though the U.S. government does not pay any government or individual for the remains of missing Americans, it is authorized to reimburse the North for the cost of the operation from recovery to return. A Congressional Research Service report showed that Washington paid $28 million to North Korea as reimbursement for the recovery of remains returned between 1996 and 2005. North Korea experts say the fact that Pyongyang did not request monetary compensation this time is unusual. Some say Kim Jong-un wants to show his decisiveness and sincerity in implementing the agreements made with the U.S., which would also encourage Washington to do its part. There are also suggestions that it could be as the North knows the U.S. would not be able to pay them right now anyway.
Paying them could be a violation of the sanctions. It would be hard for the U.S. to do that while telling other countries to comply.
The expert said Pyongyang might ask for compensation later if their ties get better, and he also noted that in the past, reimbursement was paid later after the soldiers were identified from their DNA. 이지원, Arirang News.
South and North Korea will be sending military generals to the border village of Panmunjom on Tuesday to talk about ways to reduce military tensions. Notably, this meeting was requested by the North. Lee Sung-jae reports.
South and North Korea will hold their second general-level military talks on Tuesday at the Peace House on the southern side of the Truth Village of Panmunjom to discuss measures to enforce the military portion of their April summit agreement. The general-level military talks were first proposed by Pyongyang, who showed disappointment over the lack of progress during their first meeting back in June.
Let's not have such talks again. The military, it's disappointing. We fully understand your stance, but next time let's prepare more so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Major General Kim Do-gyun will be leading South Korea's 5-member delegation, while the Lieutenant General An Ik-san will lead the North Korean delegation. The two sides are expected to discuss measures to build trust and increase arms control, such as disarming the joint security area in the DMZ, and possibly withdrawing troops and military equipment from border guard posts. Also on the agenda could be the idea of a joint project to excavate the remains of troops in the DMZ who were killed during the Korean War, while some observers say that the military could also discuss the summit agreement to turn the Northern Limit Line, a de facto sea border, into a peace zone to prevent accidental clashes. The first general-level military talks, which were held for the first time in a decade, led to two sides agreeing to completely restore their military communication lines. The two Koreas hope their second talks will be even more fruitful, in line with the Panmunjom Declaration. Lee Sung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korean athletes are now training with their South Korean teammates for the Asian Games coming up in Indonesia. It's the latest in the two Koreas' cooperation in sports that started this year with the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Won Jung-hwan has more.
34 North Korean athletes will be joining their counterparts from the south on joint teams at the Asian Games in about 3 weeks' time in Jakarta and Palembang, Indonesia. The delegation flew to South Korea on Sunday via Beijing for joint training. The two Koreas are set to field joint teams in women's basketball, dragon boat racing, and rowing for the Asian Games, which will be held in August. There are 18 North Korean athletes here for the dragon boat team, 8 for rowing, 4 for women's basketball, and 4 support staff. The North Korean paddlers will begin their training with South Koreans at Chungju, about 150 kilometers south of Seoul.
When we move to the training center in Chungju, we're expecting to first go through some medical tests and administrative works. Then after a few days later, we think we will start the joint training. We expect male squad to get good results considering what they achieved in short period of time at the previous Guangzhou Asian Games. Also, our female athletes are doing well. And together with outstanding North Koreans in the team, we expect to grab some medals at the tournament.
In women's basketball, 3 North Koreans, Ro Soo-kyung, Chang Mi-kyung, and Kim Hae-yeon, who all played in the inter-Korean friendly matches in Pyongyang earlier this month, were named to the unified team along with 9 South Korean players. The South Korean team are the defending champions at the Asian Games. They're currently in Taiwan for an international tournament and will get back this Wednesday. Until then, the 3 North Korean players will be practicing on their own in Jincheon, 90 kilometers south of Seoul. They don't have a lot of time to practice together, though. The Asian Games begin on August 18. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
It's summer vacation season, and South Korean President Moon Jae-in is starting his own 5-day holiday on this Monday. But it won't be all rest. He's planning to spend the whole time out of the public eye at a military installation. The presidential office of Cheongwade says the president will spend his time off mapping out ways to run the country in the latter half of this year, as his administration deals with issues like a slowing economy and military reform. The Blue House added that President Moon will still get briefings in case of an emergency, one reason why he's staying at a facility run by the armed forces. The top office also added that unlike last year's summer break, the president will not be in contact with the people. A South Korean medical team flew over to Laos over the weekend to lend a helping hand to people displaced by the collapse of a dam last Monday. Cha Sang-mi has this story.
The 20-member South Korean medical team dispatched to Laos will set up a clinic at the local health center in Sanamsai in the southern province of Atapu, where the dam collapsed last week. They arrived on Sunday at the airport of Pakse. Over the next 10 days, 15 doctors and 5 support staff will treat displaced residents of Atapu province and help prevent the spread of contagious diseases. The medical have different specializations, including internal medicine, pediatrics, and emergency medicine. After setting up their clinic, they will be joined by doctors from the Atapu State Hospital. Their services are likely to be in high demand from the roughly 3,500 displaced residents being housed in temporary shelters. The team is led by No Dong-hwan from Korea's National Medical Center, who said they will work to, quote, cure the wounded hearts of the Laotian people and do their best to start giving treatment as soon as possible. Dr. No, who has ample experience in disaster areas abroad, said he organized the team based on the information the advance party had sent. South Korea's foreign ministry is considering the dispatch of an additional emergency team or relief supplies in case the current team in Laos or the Laotian government asks for more help. The ministry has already sent out $1 million worth of relief goods, including cash and more than 1,000 blankets and sanitation kits. More than 130 people are still missing after last week's dam collapse, which has so far claimed nearly 30 lives. The reason the dam broke has still not been discovered. It was built by a joint venture that included 2 Korean companies, SK Engineering and Construction Company and Korea Western Power Company. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting with this hour's news headlines.
Last week's repatriation of US soldiers' remains from the Korean War has helped rekindle some momentum into North Korea-US relations that seem to have stalled in recent weeks. It's hoped that the two sides can now make more progress towards the North Korea's denuclearization, as well as talks over security guarantees that Pyongyang wants from Washington. Our Oh Jung-hee has this report.
Now that North Korea has returned more of the remains of American soldiers who died in the Korean War, attention falls on how Pyongyang and Washington will proceed with denuclearization talks. Though Friday's repatriation is not directly relevant to Pyongyang's denuclearization, it's widely seen that the move did help both sides build trust and therefore could have a positive effect on their denuclearization dialogue. Since the June 12th summit in Singapore, North Korea and the U.S. have had difficulty moving forward on the denuclearization front. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Pyongyang for the third time, but could not meet Kim Jong-un, and after his visit, the North claimed Washington was making unilateral demands about denuclearization and inspections. Pyongyang began dismantling key facilities at its Seohae satellite launching station, believed to have been the regime's key ICBM test site, but at the same time pressed Washington and Seoul to declare a formal end to the Korean War. From here on, it's expected that North Korea and the U.S. will focus on finding a middle ground between the U.S. giving the regime a security guarantee through measures like ending the Korean War and Pyongyang taking steps to denuclearize. This week, the foreign ministers of the two Koreas, the U.S. and China, will all be attending the ASEAN Regional Forum in Singapore. Their meetings, bilateral or otherwise, could help add momentum to the Pyongyang-Washington denuclearization talks. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Joining me in the studio today to discuss this further, we have with us Professor Min Jung-hoon from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Thank you for making the time to come in today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, as we've just heard, the US State Department has confirmed that no money was paid to North Korea for the repatriation of the remains of the American soldiers that were killed in the Korean War. This is different to previous instances of where North Korea gave back remains to the US. The US had to pay millions of dollars for that. Why do you think North Korea changed its stance this time?
Well, as many people talk about that, I also think that the North Korea is trying to show its sincerity in terms of the U.S.-North Korean relations. As you know, the North Korea and the United States got the first historical summit on June 12th in Singapore, and one of the promises, agreements that the two sides made was to the returning of the remains of the American soldiers, and so the North Korea and the Chairman Kim is trying to deliver the promise he made, and during the process, as you mentioned, the Chairman Kim, the North Korea did not receive any money from the United States. That's totally different from what he did in the past. And it shows how sincere North Korea is in terms of the relations with the United States. In the past, North Korea tried to make use of that kind of the relations with the United States. And actually, in the 1990s, when the Kim's father ruled North Korea, it developed the nuclear weapons, and during the process, when it was a lack of the money, it just came out of the negotiations with the United States, and just after the negotiation, the North Korea got the money from the United States and just walked away from the negotiations. So the U.S. got the kind of lack of the confidence and the trust with the North Korea. So that is the most important reason why North Korea and the United States got some kind of delayed this process in terms of the North Korea's denuclearization process now. So the Chairman Kim knows that kind of the aspect very well. So by not receiving any money from the repatriation process this time, North Korea is showing the United States and the international community that North Korea is the sincere in terms of the dealing with the United States at this time. So it's a very good the sign of the progress and the sign of the negotiations and the process. So it's truly the good starting point, I think.
What's different from now and back then? Why are they sincere about following through with this process to repatriate without taking money? What's changed?
That's mainly because the Chairman Kim got the different plan in terms of the maintaining his regime compared to what his father did in the past. In the past, his father Kim Jong-il, he tried to take advantage of the nuclear weapon program, developing the program to get some kind of money or the assistance from the international community. And after receiving the money and just the Kim Jong-il just going back to the nuclear weapons, developing the process and just the canceled all the agreements with the United States. But this time, the Kim Jong-un got the different initiative or the plan. Like you may know that the North Korea got the declaration of the completing its nuclear the last year, probably November last year. Actually, after that declaration, North Korea is trying to be focused on develop its own economy. And to develop its own economy, it is necessary to get the sanctions, economic sanctions, lifted, and they also need to become a normal state. Is kind of as a member of the international community. So the two leaders of North Korea got totally different plans or initiatives. So this time, unlike his father, the Chairman Kim got kind of the big plan in terms of the making its economy prospered. So that makes the biggest difference, I think.
Trump has expressed his thanks to Kim Jong-un for returning the remains publicly and on Twitter as well. But so far, there's been no acknowledgement from Pyongyang. There's been no mention of it in state media, in state newspapers or propaganda websites. Why do you think that is?
Well, there could be several reasons for that, but I think that the North Korea is expressing its complaints that the United States is not providing any security guarantee measure, although North Korea has provided several the measures in relation to the denuclearizing itself, it argues. So like the North Korea first halting the nuclear and missile, the provocations, and dismantled the Punggye-ri, the nuclear test site, and just the returning of the remains of the American soldiers, and probably in the process of the shutting down the missile, the engine test site. So in terms of the North Korea's the point of view, it has done many things, but it has got anything back from the United States. So the North Korea is not satisfied with what the United States is doing, for that matter. So by making itself silent, the North Korea is expressing its complaints and pushing the United States to do something in accordance with what North Korea has done.
To do something, that's the next question. Now that the remains of the US soldiers have been returned, what happens next? What does North Korea do next, and what does US have to do next?
Well, probably the North Korea is waiting for the kind of the measures from the United States in accordance with what North Korea has done. But it's not that simple, because in the United States, there have been still the pessimistic views about the U.S. and North Korea relations. although the North Korea is arguing that it has provided many the measures in relation to the denuclearization, but still in the United States, there are many experts and the other people in Washington that North Korea is not showing actual visual measures directly related to the denuclearizing itself. So although the North Korea fulfilled the returning of the remaining of the American soldiers, it's not directly related to the denuclearization. So the many people in Washington think that the North Korea, it's time that the North Korea show the visual measures directly related to the denuclearization. So the U.S. is still waiting. So many people expect that the U.S. could provide the declaration to end the Korean War only after it got some actual visual measures directly related to the denuclearization, like the inspection or so kind of providing full the roadmap about how North Korea is denuclearizing itself, or the freezing of the facilities and the materials in relation to the nuclear weapons and missiles. But the North Korea is arguing that it's time U.S. show something about how the U.S. is securing the North Korea's security guarantee. So it's tricky. So which comes first? That's the tricky point the two countries have. So this is where the South Korean government tries to move in terms of facilitating the process.
Well, South Korea perhaps has the opportunity to facilitate this process, as you said, at this week at the ASEAN Regional Forum in Singapore. The foreign ministers of all these countries of the ASEAN region and South Korea and the US are all going to be there. And there are possibly going to be many events happening. There's talks of a South Korea and North Korea talks between Kang Kyung-hwa and North Korea's foreign minister, and possibly even trilateral talks with the US as well. Do you think it will happen?
Well, first, there would be the many bilateral meetings, as you mentioned, the inter-Korean the meetings by the top diplomats of the two Koreas. It could be possible, and it's also possible to have the top diplomats meetings between the South Korea and the United States, and possibly and North Korea and America, the U.S. the ministers the meeting. But it's not clear whether the trilateral meeting among the South and North Korea and United States could be possible, because still the denuclearization process is kind of a bilateral process. So it's still in the starting process. So U.S. and the North Korea try to have the initial results outcomes for the process. So it would not be easy. It would not be easy for South Korea to get directly involved in the process and make the bilateral process into kind of the trilateral or the multilateral process. And if that happens, so United States would not like that, because still the U.S. government, the Trump administration, want to have some kind of the visual outcomes or the results that that administration could use to persuade its domestic audience. But the U.S. government, U.S. administration, Trump administration still try to focus on the bilateral meetings with the North Korea. So it would not be easy. But if the trilateral meeting will come out, it means that three countries got some kind of a precondition kind of agreements about the denuclearization process and providing the security guarantee measures to North Korea. So it would be a good sign. But still, nobody knows, because the North Korea, United States got the totally different the preferences and the ideas about how they would get what they want.
Well, it sounds like it could be a great opportunity to have all these people in the same room, but perhaps there's not enough time yet to get ready for it this time. Well, that's all we have time for, Professor. Thank you for coming in and sharing us your insights.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our show. Hope you can join us again next time. But in the meantime, you can check out our website, arirang.com/news, for all our latest updates. Thank you for watching, and see you again next time. Goodbye.